Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sharon Sabota, and I'm the director for the Center for Women and Gender Equity. And I've got a couple of student facilitators who will be introducing themselves shortly, Allie and Maya, and I'm going to be handing the program over to them. Before I jump in and do that, though, I just wanted to acknowledge that we've had many iterations of the ways in which we've celebrated Women's History Month over the years. And Betty Reid Soskin, who we're really lucky to have with us again, who is now 100 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Who's now 100 years old, has been with us at various times over the years and has probably come to our campus at least 5 times. And many of those times were before she was on the radar of people like Barack Obama and different nighttime talk show hosts and news channels. She's really become a national icon. And then along the way, we've been blessed to get to know Diara, Betty's daughter. And so I'm very excited that they've offered to come and be with us again today. And I just wanted to express my personal gratitude for both of you for being such an important part of our work over these years. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Maya and Allie to get the program started.
Well, you can go and introduce yourself first.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Allie Bamberger, and I'm a junior student at St. Mary's. And I chose the Center for Women and Gender Equity for my community engagement. I'm very honored to be talking about Betty today and can't wait to share what I have to say.
Hi, friends. My name is Maya Patel. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm the student lead at the Center for Women and Gender Equity, and I've been working there for 4 years now. I'm a senior, and my majors are business, marketing, and ACL, and I am honored to be here today. A little bit about this program. We thought this program would be amazing to offer again because we last saw Betty in person, I believe in 2019.
2019.
In person in 2019. It's been a while, and I had the honor of going to that event, and I was happy that we're throwing it back on again. We have seen iterations of it through Zoom, and this is my last one, so I'm excited to be one of the hosts tonight. A little bit of background, or a little bit for today. We are raffling off 2 copies of Betty's book. So if you have your camera on the whole entire time, you will be eligible to be entered into the raffle, and you all will be randomly selected at the end. And today's program is called Legacies of Change, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so y'all can see the amazing PowerPoint we have put together. Ooh. Okay, can you all see that? Are we okay? Perfect.
Yes.
Allie, all you.
Perfect. I'm just going to give a very short background on Miss Betty. This is Betty Reid Soskin, and she, her, hers. She's a ranger with the National Park Service. She was assigned to the Rosie the Riveteer World War II Homefront National Historical Park in Richmond, California. At the age of 100, she's the oldest National Park Ranger serving the United States. And in February 2018, she released a memoir called Sign My Name to Freedom.
Hi, friends. I have the honor to introduce Diara Reid. Diara's pronouns are she, her, and hers. Diara Reid ran Reid's Records, which was one of the first of Black-owned record shops in California and one of the few shops of any kind where African-American music could be purchased before the 1960s. Diara facilitates 2 support groups through the Pacific Center for Human Growth of Berkeley, and the first is for African-American women by ways of trans experience along with NB and questioning, and the other is for trans tweens and gender questioning ages from 9 to 13. Diara went through her own gender identity journey several years ago and now serves as her mother, Betty's caretaker. So I'm going to share a little bit of a video. Please let me know if you can hear it.
get to sit on a kitchen stool in the federal government.
Maya, you have to keep your microphone on or else we can't hear.
The expectations for Black women when I was growing up was that you became a domestic servant or would work in agriculture. And that would have been my choice, or at least my fate. Except that I married Mel Reid. Mel was in his senior year at the University of San Francisco, playing left halfback for the San Francisco Dons. And what 19-year-old wouldn't prefer that? So I completely escaped that life of servitude.
Okay, so I'm getting messages that y'all can barely hear. So when I'm gonna share screen again, I will share my sound and we'll redo the video. I am so sorry.
I get to sit on a kitchen stool in a federal government uniform in a little theater sharing my truth. They put a soapbox under my feet and a microphone in my hand, and I get to get even. The expectations for Black women when I was growing up was that you became a domestic servant or would work in agriculture. And that would have been my choice, or at least my fate, except that I married Mel Reid. Mel was in his senior year at the University of San Francisco, playing left halfback for the San Francisco Dons. And what 19-year-old wouldn't prefer that? So I completely escaped that life of servitude. I worked in a Jim Crow segregated union hall. I stood at my little window making change of addresses for the people lined up at my window, and I really assumed that all the shipyard workers were Black, because the only people I saw were the people who came to my window. It was the time when formal racial segregation entered my life. Mel and I thought nothing of going out and buying a lot in the suburbs, but without realizing those people are out there to get away from people like us. And we went through 5 years of death threats. My third grader was the only Black kid in the school the semester that we moved into our new house. The fundraiser of the PTA that year was a minstrel show, and all of the teachers and the administrators were in blackface. That was suburban life in 1953. 20 years later, that same community sent me to represent them as the McGovern delegate to the Miami Convention. I immediately recognized the sites that formed a park were all sites of racial segregation. There was nobody in that room that had any reason to know that but me. And I realized there was no intention to leave my history out, but my history would never be told, and that there were so many stories that were not being told. There's a rich Mexican-American history. There's a Japanese-American history. This was all American history. And so I became actively involved in the early plans to be sure that that history was not omitted. At this point, I'm working a 5-hour day, 5 days a week. I give 3 to 5 presentations in our little theater. Little because it's only a 48-seat. I sell out like Hamilton, you know. It is my honor to present to you the President of the United States.
Thank you, Betty, for that introduction, for your extraordinary service.
I am still having first experiences at 96. I wake up every morning and shoot out of bed because I can't wait to see what next week is. I don't expect to retire at all. I'm going to go straight from the park to the cemetery. I get
All right, Betty, we're going to begin with 2 questions. The first one was, how did you begin your journey to finding yourself and your purpose after losing some of the most important men in your life?
Oh dear. I remember getting to be 50 maybe, and not even wondering who I was. But the 3 men who were the most important in defining who Betty was were suddenly dead. In 3 months, they all died. My father, my first and my second husbands. And I just had no idea who I was because I hadn't ever really identified as Betty. 3 months later, after this grief, I suddenly woke up and began to have a sense of who Betty was. And I've been spinning around in space ever since, trying to figure out who that is. I know now that we each must define ourselves. I didn't discover that until I was 50. So becoming a ranger at 85 was no problem. I'm still making discoveries at 100. And I have no idea who I was before I was 50. But I love who I am now.
So beautiful. Do you want to ask the next question, Allie? Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Betty. You bring so much wisdom with your answer. And our last question for you was, what is the most important change that you've observed or experienced in your 100 years on this planet so far?
I think I would answer that differently depending upon who asked it and at what point I was in my move toward 100. I think that because I was asked that earlier today, I probably would choose the moment that I was on the stage in Washington, introducing the President of the United States. I don't think I ever would have dreamed that that could be possible. But it was. And I introduced him to the public all the way around the world.
that was such a wonderful thing, because I had in my hand a bag that it contained 3 things. One was a picture of my great-grandmother. The second was a string of pearls that had gone to Canton, Mississippi, with Susan Sanford. The third
was a picture of,
No, the evening bag was given to you by.
yeah, the bag was given to me by my Aunt Vivian, who had received it from our aunt Emily, who had received it from her husband when she was 35, at least when they were married 35 years. I had given it to my granddaughter, so that bag contained all of our history.
Your grandmother was
My grandmother
born a slave.
had been born a slave. She was born in 1846. I don't know.
So to have all that with the president.
That's right. To have all of that in my hand as I was being greeted by the President of the United States, and know that we were standing in the shadow of the White House that had been built by slaves. And that I knew that, and that he didn't, that there was something that the President of the United States was unaware of. And I knew. That's,
thank you, Betty. That's such a powerful story. And it's really a story about the generations of women and all the progress that they've made. And thank you for sharing that, Betty.
thank you.
I'm going to pass it over to the students who have a video, and then we'll take you out of the spotlight so you can relax and just sit back and enjoy. Can we all acknowledge Betty with a round of applause as we transition? Thank you, Betty.
6 at this hour, the West Contra Costa School District is meeting to change the name of one of its schools in the name of social justice. This time, it's happening without a lot of argument. KPIX5's John Ramos explains why.
Renaming schools has become a controversial topic, but in West Contra Costa, they've discovered it's a lot easier if you pick an alternative name that almost everyone can get behind. Juan Crespi Middle School in El Sobrante is named after a Franciscan missionary in the 1700s who helped subjugate the native population, forcing children as young as 10 to work. That was revealed by students in a school-wide history project to research his past.
He represented the fact that he could take people's land and convert them into a religion that they didn't do or start with.
Because when I heard about it, I was like, oh, wow, okay. I don't want this as my school name.
By involving the entire school community, there have been almost no objections raised about the decision to change the name. And the new namesake of the school has received even more universal approval. Betty Reid Soskin, the East Bay author and social justice activist, just retired from her job as a park ranger at age 99. She lives in the area, and though she was once given a presidential medal from President Obama, she told the school board this might be her most cherished honor.
Having a school named for me, that is absolutely, that's the one thing I would look to see happen. And that this might happen is just more than I can ever dream.
The school's principal says renaming the school for Betty was an easy decision.
Because, you know, there's no, I can't find the perspective one might have to push back on Betty Reid Soskin.
Anaya Zanad represented the students on the renaming committee and says Betty embodies everything they were hoping for in a name.
She cares about everybody, and she's
she's freaking amazing. She worked until 99. Like, geesh.
In El Sobrante, John Ramos, KPIX 5.
She is pretty amazing, all right. The principal says the official dedication of the new name tentatively set for September 22nd. That'll be Betty Reid Soskin's 100th birthday.
And that news clip is from 2021. So that's a great piece to show as we transition to the next section, as we talk about how to carry on the legacy. So now there's a Betty Reid Soskin School.
Hi friends. So as you saw in the video, there is now a school, and our theme today is Legacies of Change. So we're going to be talking a bit about passing the baton and passing the torch for the next generation. And as we do so, we welcome De'Ara Reid to answer a couple of questions. So we have 3 questions for you to answer. And the first one is, can you tell us about your journey as a primary caretaker for the woman who cared for you?
Well, first of all, I would like to voice my disappointment to having to follow that. I mean, come on, you all just set me up, shoot. Oh, and I gotta clarify, my mother has not retired. She is still employed with the National Park Service. So the news isn't always the news is right. Yes, how do I, okay. In August of 2018, I discovered that I actually have been wrong all my life about my gender, which was quite a surprise to me. That actually I've always been a woman pretending to be a man to that point. In September of 2019, I was planning to close our store because it reached 75 years, and I had ran it for the last 30 years, which was a gospel music church supply store. Well, yeah. And I was going to go off in the sunset and do my thing, and no one would know about it. But my mother had a stroke, and it kind of derailed everything for me. I was basically saddled with her care. I had a week to be prepared for her to be released from the hospital, and I was pretty much all by my lonesome. And to tell you the truth, my former self had always feared having to care for an elderly parent. That was something that I carried all my life, that, oh my God, when that time comes, I don't know if I can deal with it. And it was very frightening when she came home because, you know, she had just had a stroke a week before, and I was responsible for her care, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if I was going to kill her, you know, but I was stuck with that. It was in my hands. And had not I discovered De'Ara, I couldn't have done it. It would have been too much for me. Well, it would have been too much for him. De'Ara kind of like just took it in stride, and I mean, it's been the most rewarding thing for me. Not so much to give to my mother, but it also is very rewarding for myself, that I know when stuff gets real, that I can handle it. So it's it's been really instrumental for me. It doesn't require thank you. It doesn't require praise. It doesn't require people telling me I'm so brave. I can sleep well at night, and I can get up in the morning and do what I have to do with no regrets.
Thank you. And so we will go to our next question, which is, how has your own gender identity journey inspired the way in which you show up in the world? And it's kind of a two-part question on how has it impacted you as your mother's caregiver?
Well, I kind of answered the second one already, but wow. My gender journey is like, what? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I didn't see it coming. I had no clue whatsoever. It wasn't a situation like a lot of my trans siblings will like, well, yeah, I knew it when I was 4 years old, or I knew it when I was 10 years old, or I knew it. I was oblivious, you know. It's kind of like my mom. She didn't discover herself till she was 50 after the men in her life died. I didn't discover myself until I was 65. I lived my life. I thought I was a heterosexual cis male. You know, I did everything that society told me to do, everything my parents told me to do once I came out the womb, my friends, my school, my community, society. You know, I trudged along through 2 marriages. I had parented 4 kids and 3 stepchildren. I was a construction worker, Little League coach. I mentored generations of Berkeley youth through baseball. They all looked up at me as their father figure, and I was. And I thought, you know, he did a good job. He made some differences, you know. But I discovered when I hit 63 that there was something that was missing from my life, and it had always been there. That I could never escape, but I could never explain. It didn't make sense to me because I was never a gay male. I didn't even know why I had any attractions to other males because that wasn't the way I was built. So I was confused. But once I found my identity, everything fell into place. Everything fell into place. And I didn't know that I was depressed. I didn't know that he was unhappy because that's what guys do, you know? That's the life the guys have. You know, you suck it up and keep going. You know, you put everything in front ahead of you and you just trudge on. But once I got on the other side of the universe, everything tasted better. Everything smells sweeter. I can now know what happiness really is. And it's been a very, 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 very rich experience because how many people in this world have a chance to view life from 2 totally different worlds? And I tell you, they are totally different. Totally. I can appreciate the good things and the bad things in both. But for me, it's just widened my whole view of everything. I was limited. I was so limited before. But now, you know, it's one of my mother's biggest quotes and the things that she lives by are what's important in life are the questions. That the answers are only temporary because they're always changing. And you can judge your evolution and your change and your progress by the questions that keep coming. So now I feel like I'm asking a lot more questions than I did before. A lot more. And I think it's reflected in the way I show up in the world now too. Because now it's, he kind of circled the wagons and took care of what he could take care of. But she wants to more share the gifts that she has with others in hopes that she can make the road a little bit less bumpy. So I think there's much more, I feel much more compassionate as a person, much more understanding as a person, and just fuller. I mean, you know, we're born male and female. I won't dispute that. But we're not born a boy or a girl. We're not born a man or a woman. That's all learned behavior. So you can't tell me that I can't be a woman. You can't tell me that. Because what's inside of here tells me that the chemical composition that's going on underneath is that. And it feels right. I wasn't, when I came out the womb, I wasn't assigned, I was assigned male at birth, but I wasn't assigned, well, also I was assigned African American when I came out as birth. I was assigned male and I was African American. Those things were put on me. And it took 63 years for me to say, wait a minute, that's not what I chose. That's what you chose for me. And now I'm at the point where, you know, is my life hard? I mean, hey, I'm African American. That's hard to deal with. And of course I have light skin privilege, but that's a two-edged sword. You know, I mean, I'm probably more palatable than my brothers and sisters that are darker. But I'm also isolated because of it too. So throughout my life, I've always been an other. When I grew up in Walnut Creek, I was the blackest thing that ever could be. But when I came into Berkeley, into the hood, oh, I wasn't, you know, I was high yellow. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't part of the clan, you know. So then when I discovered I was trans, I was like, oh my God, now it's even worse. But really what has really surprised me, and this is just probably in the last couple of years, is, oh God, I'm a woman. That might be worse than the other two. You know, I mean, that's incredibly hard. So to be in those intersections in my life, why would anybody choose to go down that road? It's one of the hardest roads to have to go to. There's places in this world that it would throw me off a building. But if that's the price to be happy and to be in your true identity and to feel like yourself, no matter whatever the noise is on the outside, I tell you, it's worth it. And it's not a choice. It's a discovery.
Thank you so much for that. We actually have 2 more questions and then we'll open up for Q&A. So our next question is, and you kind of already answered this a little bit, and it was a little bit in your bio when we introduced you, but can you describe what it was like to advocate for folks with their identity and what work you're doing current?
Well, when I first started my journey, I joined support groups for trans women just to see what was out there. I didn't know if it fit me or not. Some of it I didn't feel like it did, but they were instrumental for me. I joined one through my healthcare through Kaiser, and then I was going to the Pacific Center. And they were instrumental for me to be within community. I mean, I really needed that because a lot of folks, a lot of my siblings do this individually all by themselves, and they're not blessed to be in Berkeley. They might be in Kansas or, Wyoming or something, all by themselves. I mean, but once you can be within community, it gives you strength to ask those questions. So I was in support groups for probably around 3 years. And the problem is most of the support, both of the support groups I attended were all Eurocentered. There weren't many people like me there. If I did see someone, I wouldn't see them the next week because they wouldn't come back. If I had something that was important to me and my own experience, if I brought it up, instead of being a conversation starter, it was always an ending because people didn't want to talk about it. So there was a lot that I was missing. Even though I was within that community, I wasn't within my community. So I saw a real need for that. So I decided that I wanted to start a support group for African American women of trans experience. And that's what I did. That's what I'm currently doing at the Pacific Center for Human Growth in Berkeley. And because, there's issues that we need to talk about in closed session that other people don't need to be hearing. We have trauma that we have amongst ourselves that others don't need to be privy to. We have work that we need to do because of what has the trauma of 400 plus years runs deep within the Black community. Very, very deep. And that trauma is not going to be solved from without. It's only going to be solved from within. So we currently meet every Thursday, small groups so far, but I'm encouraged when my sisters is here with me. And just
our book's more modern.
alone, it's been such a great experience for me because I feel like I'm home when I'm with them. I'm home. We can talk about stuff that I've never been able to talk about. And there's things that we don't even need to talk about to communicate. So it's been really fantastic. Then earlier this fall, I had the opportunity, they were looking for a facilitator for the trans tween group, which is ages through 13. And I was just, oh yeah, that's me. Let me do this. Let me go talk to the kids. As adults, we got a lot of baggage. We got a whole lot of stuff that we're dragging with us. But the kids are just so fresh and to hear their perspectives, I'm there as much to learn from them as what I have to share with them. So I feel like going forward, that's one of my passions. I want to work with LGBTQIA plus youth, and because of who I used to be, Mr. Reid, owner of Reid's Records, Betty Reid Soskin's son, Melvin Reed, the halfback's son, gospel promoter, had 2 radio gospel shows on the radio, all of a sudden disappeared. But now Diarra's reappearing and gonna be reappearing in a big way. And a lot of those folks that I used to deal with are gonna see where I went. I now sit on this board of the San Francisco Pride also. So, you know, I'm gonna make an imprint, and I'm gonna use whatever platform I used to have to start off some very, very, very difficult conversations within the Black community. And there's a lot of kids that saw Mr. Reed in the store, and now they can see Diarra and say, hey, if she could do it, maybe it's all right for me to do it.
Thank you so much. And that's truly inspiring. And I look forward to the big impact and the big reveal. We have one last question before we go and open it up. And the question is, you talked about inspiration and your journey with activism. And so we were wondering, how has your mom inspired you in your own activism journey? And how will you keep the tradition of fighting for justice alive in future generations? You talked a little bit about this in your groups that you've been doing, but how do you envision that growing possibly?
Well, my time with my mother has been very revealing to me. I can tell you that prior to her stroke, we really weren't close. We were in 2 different orbits totally. Ever since I was 10 years old. I don't think I really knew my mother. And then when she found this fame, I kind of felt rejected, that I didn't share that part with her, that was more important to her than, you know, than me. I mean, other people would find out about things before I would, you know. Her friends would tell me what she was doing. So I was a little cynical, but since I've been her primary caretaker and also her PR person and her scheduler and her in-town manager, and I've sat back and listened to her story over and over and over, and some things that I've never heard her say, and some comments she has made to me. I know the real Betty Reid Soskin that most folks don't know, but I know where she gets her power. And some people might not like it, and some people haven't liked it, because my mother's always been a straight shooter, and she doesn't care about casualties. She says what she says in the moment, and she lives in the moment. She's never been a planner. She doesn't prepare for anything. It amazes me. She gets up in the morning and she does Betty. I've seen her at events with a packed house that she's a keynote speaker, and I traveled with her, and she wouldn't even think about what she was going to say. She wasn't even sure she could say it. She was kind of like, what do they want me for? And then she'd walk up to the podium and she would just rock the house. Not a single note nothing. It just flowed out of her. And that's the way she lives her life. Everything flows out. She doesn't hold on to anything, and she doesn't plan it. Her music, she wrote all her songs like in 20 minutes, no second takes. They were just finished projects right there. And I feel like I can feel that in my DNA. You know, it's kind of like spirituality. You know it's there, and you have faith in it, and you trust in it, and you don't overthink it. You just allow it to happen. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts she's given me. And she's unapologetically Betty. I've never heard her apologize for anything she's ever said. I have to work on that one. But you know, my mother is there's not another one like her, I can tell you that.
That's for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's incredible. I cannot imagine being unapologetically myself and having no notes. I don't think I can. I know I practiced this like 5 times before this, and I still stutter. So before we move on to Q&A, we wanted to share a little quote that we found inspirational as well. And it's the most important lesson I've learned is that there is a coexistence of conflicting truths in the world. And Betty Reid Soskin said that in 2018. And now, my friends, we're going to open it up to Q&A. So my friend Allie will be reading off questions in the chat. Feel free to go ahead and type it in the chat. And Allie will read them off. And we are so happy that we have time for you to answer a couple more.
While people are thinking of their questions, I just also wanted to thank Diara for helping to coordinate this event. And I was really listening deeply to what you were talking about, you know, really your mom's ability to live in each moment. And I also noticed that today when she felt a little maybe unsure about her story, I noticed that you were able to kind of pick up the pieces and keep the story flowing. Is it because you've had a chance to be by her side as she's told her stories, and now they're almost second nature to you as well?
I mean, I've had a front row seat for the last 2.5 years. I mean, you have to realize that in the last month, in the last couple of weeks, we have had film crews in here almost on the daily. I mean, Fox News came in 2 weeks ago. The History Channel left. Water Barrel left yesterday. I mean, it's just been, you know, a barrage since February started. And she has her weekly talk. And so at the most part, you know, another thing about my mother is she doesn't like to share the stage. So when she's talking, most of the time she was like, she doesn't want me to be around, but she's 100 years old at this point now. And it's like, she needs a little help. And when you see her look off camera, it's like, I'm stuck, come on, hit me on my back. So, you know, something will come out. And, you know, I've heard the whole thing. You know, I've heard all of her stories. So, you know, they're kind of like second nature for me. So, you know, we work in unison at this point.
Well, I just think it's beautiful, not only to watch you like supporting her in that moment, knowing kind of the nuances of the child-parent relationship that you've talked about and kind of the not sharing the stage, but it's like a real life example. Like right now you're holding up her story. And so we know, you know, in addition to the work you're doing, you'll be able to continue holding that story as well. I just thought it was really beautiful to see you put that in practice today. So thank you.
Well, the thing of it is, Sharon, most people know the Betty Reid Soskin superhero. And what I like to bring is, I like to humanize her so people can see that she's just an extraordinary, ordinary person just like you. That there's no gene that she has that everybody else doesn't have. We all have the same. And it's all up to us to reach out and find it. It's not to find someone else to supply that for us. And she's not perfect, although everybody thinks she is. Honey, let me tell you, she ain't perfect.
I love that. It's a both and world.
Mhm.
And Allie, I think some things have popped up in the chat that Allie can amplify for us. Some might be comments.
Perfect. I'll start out with the comment from Sophia before I read the question, but she said, no question, just a comment. I'm blown away by Miss Betty Soskin's story. I know Diarra, know a bit of her story, but was absolutely impressed with what she had to say as well as her mother. And then you have a question from Susan, and it says, Diarra and Betty, I would love to know a little bit about how you view this opportunity to reestablish a new relationship with each other.
Well, I mean, it's pretty much all by hindsight. We didn't have a choice. She couldn't care for herself. I was the only one I was the only one who had made themselves available at that moment. And I can tell you, I don't think she would be here today if I hadn't. I don't think she's going to be here tomorrow if I don't keep doing what I'm doing. And for me, not for her, but for me is, I don't want my mother to go to some home and mistreated because she's inconvenient. I want her to spend her last days right here at home. I want her to leave this little planet from her bed. I want her to be secure in her own space. She's a very, very, very independent woman, and I want her to have her independence as long as she can have it. And as long as I'm here, that's what's going to happen.
I think Colin asked a really good question too. He asked, in discovering yourself, what ways has your mother supported you on your journey?
Well, you know, my mother was in her 90s when she found out the Diarra existed. My oldest brother was gay. And that was kind of, you know, in the 50s. You know, that was a traumatic experience for the family, for her and for my father. But she knew what gay was, that sexuality. But trans, wait a minute. What is this trans stuff? Identity? What? I mean, you're telling me what? So it was like, she knew David for 90, for most of her life and most of my life. And that was her son. So she went through, I mean, first thing she told me when I told her, she says, what difference would it make? I'm gonna love you regardless. What difference does it make? And then it was like, oh, wait a minute. This means you're gonna do what? And you're gonna do it in front of people that know me? I mean, she was like, she would tell me, we're gonna go to this place, but you know, you shouldn't be, you know, this is conservative, so you shouldn't dress up or anything like that. So she was concerned and she grappled with it. But she also, you know, grieved losing her son. She went through, you know, she still, you know, she'll still throw David at me every once in a while. But I think since Diarra showed up and has been caretaking for her, she conceived the division and the two different people. So I think she's, you know, she's getting to know Diarra more and more and more, and not remembering David more and more and more. I mean, sometimes she tells me, she says, I don't even remember what you looked like. I don't even remember what you used to do. You know, so, you know, for a 100-year-old woman, she's pretty badass.
Denise, I think Diara just answered your question, but I'll read your comment portion of it. And she said, to hear your story about finding yourself, which allowed you to be there as a caretaker for your mom, is so powerful. And then it sounds like you found true peace in your heart.
Yes, I have. I have found true peace. I feel, you know, I feel good about the person Diara is. I think she's much more loving than he was allowed to be. I think he had to keep in the script too much. And she's just free to do whatever she, you know, it's a different world, hon. I'm like, I love womanhood. This is like, even with all the drawbacks, it's so much better. Is that it, people? Come on now.
I know, I'm like watching the chat, there's stuff coming through. As people are talking and you're reflecting kind of on your own journey along with your moms. I always like to ask this question, and because people always have a different answer, but I wonder, I guess, what's the most important lesson that you've learned from going on this particular journey? And I'm also thinking of something that your mom says, which is that it's never too late to get started. Actually, I'll give you two questions and you can take either one or meld them together. And so I think about your mom, who really got started in her journey when she was in her 50s in terms of really finding herself. And you talk about this really important journey of self-discovery that happened in your mid-60s. And some people will say, well, I'm too old to do something different. I'm too old to show up as me. I would also love to hear how you would counter that.
Well, I mean, my story is like really atypical. It's not, you know, it's not the typical trans story. I mean, I run into a lot of my siblings who are like, well, you know, I'm too old to do this. So I should just, you know, it's too late. Too late for me. Once I started learning and discovering, I couldn't stop. I had no control. You know, she just took she kicked his ass to the curb and that was it. There was no argument. You know, I mean, it was just clear as day. You know, I always told myself, if I ever run into a brick wall or a closed door, I could change, go back to do what I'm doing, just experiment. I'm still looking for that closed door. You know, it's just everything's open. Life is just, you know, rich in so many options. I mean, the options are incredible. You know, there is so much more than used to be. I mean, life is richer. It's much richer. But one thing that my mother, that I really strive, another one of her sayings, and she says in the park, is, what gets remembered is determined by who's in the room doing the remember. And I want to see if I can get as many young queer folks in rooms that decisions are being made to make a difference. I am so, oh God, the generations that are coming up now are incredible. I mean, it's just like World War II all over again. Everybody's going to have to put it together to save this planet. And the youth of today going to have to get to be very unapologetic about it. It's time to switch gears. It's time to turn over the reins to the younger generation. our generation, we thought we were going to do it, but we got derailed. And it's a humongous job. And it's not done politely. Change is never done in a polite way. So, you know, if I can empower the youth as much as I can while I'm here, that's who should be leading this stuff.
Maya, did you want to read this last question or?
Yeah, so we're going to take this one last question, and in order to honor everyone's time, after that, we're going to ask you if you have any final messages before we raffle off and close off the program. So the last question is from Christina, and it says, do you think you could have discovered yourself earlier if you had different messages in your schooling? Every day I read more stories about states banning any discussion of LGBTQ identities in schools or punishing trans kids and their families.
Well, I just did a workshop for a high school in Oakland yesterday for their diversity day. And my topic was identity. Who chose yours? And this society tells you what gender you are, who you're going to be before you are even out of the womb. Until we start changing how we raise our youth. No more gender reveal parties. No more blue and pink and trucks and dolls. We completely brainwash our kids. I'm a prime example of that. Don't you think I would have liked to have known this earlier? Whose fault was that? It definitely wasn't mine. It was the role society put on me. Yeah, I listened, but what choice did I have? I was brainwashed since birth, like all of us. I even have trans siblings that when they have kids, they tell me, oh, you want to meet my son? I'm like, dang, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know? The stuff runs so deep, it's in the DNA of the society. And it's like 5.6% of this population is queer. 94.4 thinks they're straight. But are they really? I ask you, are they really? Or are they just afraid to ask the questions? I was afraid to ask the question until I was 63. So I felt very empowered to talk to high schoolers yesterday. And I could see the eyes in the room that were like, oh, wow. We did have a choice? And I think a lot of them went out of that room wondering, whoa, maybe there's another way. I mean, it's like, what is it? Who is it? Ted Cruz said yesterday, babies are born racist. I mean, you know, I mean, this world is crazy. You know, the crazy stuff that people be putting in people's brains. We have to stop that kind of stuff. And it's up to you young folks. You need to tell these old folks to sit down. It's our turn. You all messed it all up. Let us have a chance. Make the age of these senators and congressmen in their 30s and 20s and teens, and maybe we can get something done. You have the power. Seize it.
On that note, thank you so much for speaking today. If everyone can do a reaction and a round of applause, that'd be amazing. Thank you and your mom for coming out. We truly appreciate your time. Before I wrap up, I do want to announce the raffle winner, which is Shane. Congratulations, you won the book for today. And on that note, I believe Shane is the student lead for the Sunday walk. So if you'd like to explain a little bit about that before we officially wrap up, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Shane Rivera. I am working with the Center for Women and Gender Equity this weekend. We're going to do a solidarity and community walk in honor of World Women's Muslim Day. It'll be at the Lafayette Reservoir at 10 a.m. And from 10 a.m. to 10:30, we'll just be introducing ourselves, or coffee and donuts will be provided. And then after that, we will be starting off a walk around the reservoir. So it'd be a great opportunity for everybody to come down and engage with these communities. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shane, for making the announcement. Thank you to Maya and Allie for being really great student facilitators. Let's also give them a round of applause. And also, I just thank you to Maya for envisioning including this program this year again. She thought it was really important, and that to be able to have Betty's voice included in Diara's, and I agree, and it seems that everybody who's here agrees as well. So thank you for that. Anything that you want to say to close us out, Maya?
I think I was going to leave it at Diara's note to seize the day. It was so impactful and it was really perfect, actually. Thank you so much.
Seize the day. I love it. Thank you, Diara, and thank you, Betty. Everybody have a great weekend.
Bye. All right. Bye, Sharon. Bye, Diara.
Thanks, Sharon.